Hello. First, a short recap. While exploring the possible use of a number of late Neolithic ceramics uncovered on the Cycladic islands of the Aegean Sea, I proposed a few hypotheses that are out there surfing on in hopes to get a better idea of the symbols on the lids. I started following a fish trail leading into me challenging me to uncover proof of early use of lodestones for navigation. Not necessarily to prove that the vessels were used as such, rather, I felt like there is something more to it all, and I want to know what it is. The official storyline of the use of a magnetized compass starts not earlier than 600 AD in China with the south-pointing fish compass. By gathering circumstantial information by looking at and by looking a bit closer at creation mythology and symbolism applied in ancient sciences such as astronomy and architecture, and also by following the lead of scholars who research the matter, I hope to at least throw a bit more light on that history puzzle. Since we are talking early navigation, it seemed like a good idea to touch on the night sky as well. The compass and astronomy should not be separated. Last time I dived into some ancient constellations of the northern ecliptic pole, but considering the Chinese so-called south-pointing fish compass, I knew I was possibly looking at the wrong one, the wrong pole, that is. The name Antarctica means opposite of the bear. Long before Westerners had set sail to explore the southern seas, during the classical times and Middle Ages, some seem to promote the idea that the southern sky mirrors the bear constellations of the north, Ursa Major and Minor. Ursa is Arctos in Greek, therefore Antarctos. So the southern celestial pole is occupied by an instrument of navigation called the octans, very much like the better known sextants used to measure latitude. The octans can only be used for angles of 45 degrees. Constellation Octans has no particular bright stars and is rather faint constellation installed around 1750. When we look at the true center, slightly away from Octan's constellation, we find another fish, constellation Dorado. Mind you, there are indeed several constellations that have a fish, which we will come to in a second. Fish and serpents, dragons. I will only highlight those constellations that I think are relevant here, though, and will try and keep it short altogether. So Dorado, between the constellations Reticulus and Pictor, and containing a part of the large Magellanic Cloud. In the dead center, glimmering at the southern ecliptic and opposite of northern Draco constellation, hangs the fish Doradus. The fish is named after the Dorado Mavericos, a name given by Portuguese sailors to a dolphin-like fish, also known as the mahi-mahi, which changes its colors once out of the water to eventually remain gold-grayish when dead. The Chinese refer to it as goldfish, others identified it as a regular dolphin. The constellation was introduced end of the 16th century, and 100 years later, famed astronomer Herschel adds the name Cepheus to Doradus, as in Cepheus gladius, the swordfish. But he was not the first one to call a celestial object Cepheus gladius. Pliny used that name for swordfish like comets. His contemporary Josephus will claim such a comet hung over Jerusalem for the duration of a year. The story goes that the Dutch navigators saw Doradus hunting its prey. the flying fish of the nearby constellation Volans, formerly known as the Pisces volans, and introduced early 17th century. The flying fish was actually the first fish I thought of when I looked at these fishes on the longboats of the Cycladians. Just because of their strange features, which I assume would instigate the mystery, maybe. One legend goes that these fish would go to an island at night to sleep and to mate, and then return to the sea the next day. On the other side of Dorado, we find the water snake, Hydrus. Hydrus is an actor in the Orphean Theogonies. Together with Gaia, he produced Kronos and Ananke. These two represent inevitability of the changing of time and are also represented as the two snakes crushing the primordial egg, out of which Phanes, the personification of life itself, is emerging. Orpheans derived Hydrus from Oceanus. This male water snake, sometimes said to live in the Nile, should not be confused with the female and ancient Hydra, also a water snake. The Hydra of Lerna was the seven-headed snake slain by Heracles. It is also Hydra that appears in the story of the thirsty Apollo, who orders the raven to find him some water, and the raven returns with a bad excuse and the snake instead. Crater and Corvus are put in the sky next to Hydra. I might as well mention serpents, with whom Ophiuchus seems to be struggling in most of the images of the constellations. But there is a relative consensus on the explanation, the man Ophiuchus being Asclepius the healer, and the snake being related to the one we find on the sign boards of pharmacists and to the caduceus, the Hermes staff. One day Asclepius killed a snake, and a second snake entered his room holding herbs in its mouth. These herbs brought the other snake back to life. This not only relates to the healer, but also to the Kundalini, the coiled up serpent, sometimes brought in connection with two snakes, Pingala and Ida, representing the male and the female principle of Indian yoga schools. Although serpents is probably even more related to the third snake, Shushumna, who connects these both two principles. There is more constellations, of course, that are made into fish. Cetus, the ocean beast, baleine in French, which means whale, is the monster to which Andromeda was offered in hopes to ease its wrath, and which was slain by Perseus, who used Medusa's severed head. I read the Babylonian Tiamat is sometimes identified with Cetus, which I hesitate to follow personally, but I leave it open. There are, of course, the Pisces, we know well from the Western zodiac, and these Pisces are said to be the offspring of another constellation, and this one I want to spend a bit more time on. This particular constellation is called Pisces Austrinus, also known under the names Pisces Australis, Pisces Meridionalis, Solitarius, and the Pisces Notius or Notus. Austrinus lies in the southern hemisphere and is only visible south of the 53rd degree northern latitude. In South America and South Australia, it is in its zenith. This means, though, that it was visible in the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, and the Aegean Sea, hanging low on the southern horizon. This fish is often shown swallowing the water poured out by Aquarius, which stands just above it. Austrinus was one of the 48 constellations listed by Ptolemy during the 2nd century In the 15th century, Plancius would cut off a part of its tail and use its stars to make a new constellation, Grus or the crane. The big fish, like Eratosthenes called this constellation, can be traced back to Babylonian times, where it was simply called the fish. The connection to the Assyrian so-called monster Dagon has been proposed through the centuries by historians. Others related to Uranus or the Babylonian Ea, god of the deep sea. Eratosthenes also links the big fish to goddess Atargates of the Assyrians. Hyginus claims that for this reason Syrians do not eat fish, believing it would bring sickness on them. And he also says that their priesthood, on the other hand, not only eats fish but dresses up like fish as well. There are indications enough, I think, that this is the origin of the mythological mermaids. 19th century astronomer and mythologist H.P. Allen connects Ostrinus to Oxyrhynchus, a fish revered in ancient Egypt. Oxyrhynchus in Greek, Medjet in ancient Egyptian, is often adorned with the horns of goddess Hathor. Per Medjet was an important administrative center to Upper Egypt, where not too long ago a massive amount of old papyri was uncovered, belonging to the Ptolemaic and Roman era. The fish in particular is the elephant fish, a sweet water fish that lives in the Nile, exceptional because of its ability to use electric sensors for hunting. The story comes with slight variations per usual. Some say it was the fish who saved Isis when she attempted to drown herself in a lake, and by doing so, Orihynchus deserved the place on the Dendera zodiac. Other versions claim it was the fish that ate the phallus of Osiris. Set cut him into 14 pieces in revenge for sleeping with his wife and had thrown the pieces into the Nile. Although other sources claim the fish who ate Osiris' phallus was a remora, known in legends as the Echeneis. Remora are the fish we often see attached to larger fish or turtles and other aquatic animals. Also, this fish was believed to possess special powers. Pliny described how it was responsible of Marcus Antonius' defeat against Caesar and the death of Caligula by attaching to their boats and slowing them down. Pliny often seems to be a bit of an airmonger, in my opinion. The remora was often used in love potions and such. I personally doubt that the remora or the Orihynchus are the mythical fish that gave body or essence to the Ostrinus constellation, but I don't know. I already mentioned this fish is called Piscis Notus or Notus, which means southern in general. But Notus also is the name of one of the Animoi, the 4 wind deities of Greek mythology. Under the guard of Aeolus, destined by Zeus as a keeper of the wind, there are Boreas, a wind from the north, a Thracian deity, though loved by the Athenians for his help in the victory over the Persian fleet. Zephyrus, gentle western wind announcing spring, known for his love life and his mastery over horses and tigers. Notus is a south wind, warm and moist, bringing the impetuous autumn rains of Zeus and churning up Oceanus waters, and also known as the wind that can impregnate horses. Euros, the last of the Anemoi, resided in the east. Ovid's Metamorphosis speaks of Nabatea or Persia, where the sunlight of dawn is clear and hot. Four horses pulling the wagon of Zeus are said to be the four winds. All the horses of the Greek deities are called hippoi athanatoi, immortal horses, and they are all offspring of the wind horses. I have no idea if these horsehead swastikas are anything related to these four wind horses. They are sometimes identified as Roman artifacts. Sometimes they are said to be Scythian. They are brooches and were possibly worn by a certain class of warriors. I will look into that later. This is no time for horses. I am fishing. And I find enough to make another short one before going back to the Aegean Sea with my magnets. Should be ready in a few days. Thanks for watching.